So this next section we're going to talk about blood vessel structure. So from the heart, blood is going to be transported to the rest of the body. Arteries go away from the heart, and usually arteries are going to be filled with oxygenated blood. Arteries are going to go down to arterioles and then eventually meet in a capillary bed where gases are exchanged. After gases are exchanged, venules are going to collect the blood and transport them back to the heart via veins. So arteries carry blood away from the heart, and here's a picture of some of the major arteries. Capillaries flow into slightly larger venules. Venules combine to form veins which carry blood back to the heart. So arteries away, veins back to the heart. The pulmonary arteries are the only arteries that carry deoxygenated blood, because even though they're arteries, they're going away from the heart. They're going away from the heart to go to lungs to get oxygen. The pulmonary veins are the only veins that carry oxygenated blood, because even though they're coming back to the heart, they're coming back from the lungs. The basic structure of a blood vessel includes the endothelium, which is the innermost lining of the blood vessel. So this lines the lumen of the blood vessel. The internal elastic tissue, then a layer of smooth muscle, then the external elastic tissue, and finally the fibrous connective tissue, which is on the surface of the blood vessel. Capillaries only have the endothelium and a basement membrane, so they're one cell layer thick. Arteries have a thicker wall of smooth muscle. The reason for this is we have to have pretty pressurized blood inside of an artery. If we want this blood to get everywhere in the body, it has to be under pressure to ensure that it gets to the deepest stretches of all of our tissues. Here you can see some of the differences between an artery and a vein. Arteries are usually more narrow, and they have a thicker wall of smooth muscle, and this can allow us to regulate our blood pressure. As we decrease the volume, we increase pressure. Kind of think about putting your thumb over a water hose. If you have the end of the hose kind of dripping out slowly and you put your thumb over the end, you've decreased the surface area or the volume that water has to travel through, and you can see how the water will spurt out the end of the hose at that point, because you're increasing pressure by decreasing volume. That's what we want to do with our arteries. And arteries can regulate our blood pressure just by increasing or decreasing their diameter. Veins are pretty wide open. They have a thin layer of smooth muscle, and they're wide open because we don't want to have a lot of resistance when we're trying to get blood back to the heart. So the tunica externa is the outermost layer of the blood vessel, so that's where you're going to have that fibrous connective tissue. The tunica media contains the smooth muscle, that's the middle layer, and the tunica intima is talking about that endothelium, or that inner layer of tissue. And here you can see those, so the tunica intima, the endothelium and the basement membrane. The tunica media is the smooth muscle area, and the tunica externa is that fibrous connective tissue. And you can see the difference between the veins and the arteries like I talked about here. Arteries have a narrower opening because when you decrease volume, you increase pressure. So these are highly pressurized. If you ever do a blood draw on a patient and you accidentally hit an artery, you're going to see the blood spurting into the blood collection tube. Arteries are usually buried deeper in the body, farther from the surface of the body, and usually up against a bone. That helps protect them from injury. We can feel our pulse through an artery. So as the heart beats, it's going to pulse the blood through the arteries at a particular rate, and we can actually feel that through the artery. And arteries, like I said, are usually up against a bone, so you can push the artery up against the hard surface of the bone to feel that pulse. Veins, on the other hand, are wide open because we don't want to have a lot of resistance when we're going back up to the heart. Doing a blood draw from a vein is preferred. A lot less damage happens here, The blood is flowing a lot more smoothly, and it's just a safe location to be doing this. So from largest to smallest, we have elastic arteries, muscular arteries, arterioles, medarterioles, the precapillary sphincter, which controls the blood flow to the capillaries, and then finally the capillaries, which are a single cell thick to allow for gas exchange. So that's going down here in this direction. Arterioles lead to capillary beds, where vessels are only about as wide as a red blood cell. Capillary walls are only one cell layer thick, which allows for water and substances to diffuse through easily. And then if we go back up in the other side of things, so we go through the capillary bed, now we're going up the other side of things. Capillaries go through a thoroughfare channel into the postcapillary venule, small veins, and then large veins. Veins also have valves that are similar to the SL valves in the heart to prevent the backflow of the blood. So if we look at these valves here, you can see that they exist inside of veins. Because a lot of our veins are going to be working against gravity, when you're standing up and we do have a muscle contraction that pushes the blood back up, we don't want it to fall back and pool down in the legs. If you've ever heard of varicose veins before, those are those spider web-like veins that sometimes appear in the legs or in other parts of the body, but those are due to leaky valves, and then it causes the blood to pool in those blood vessels. On the heart pumps blood into the arteries, and that's going to force blood into your tissues. But on the vein side of things, there's nothing really pulling the blood back up to the heart. There's a little bit of pressure inside of there, but blood moving back to the heart on the vein side of things is largely dependent on muscle contraction. If we don't have contracting muscles, we're not going to be able to circulate that blood. This is why if a patient is usually put in a hospital bed for a period of time, they get compression socks, or sometimes they'll get a compressor machine that squeezes their legs to help move blood again and also circulate the lymph fluid that we'll talk about in a few weeks back to the heart.